Let's get away, mystery lady. I know the world is going crazy, but I can see you having my baby. Let's get away. Let's get away, mystery lady. I know the world is going crazy, but I can see you having my baby. Let's get away. Let's get away, mystery lady. I know the world is going crazy, but I can see you having my baby. Let's get away. Let's get away, mystery lady. I know the world is going crazy, but I can see you having my baby. Let's get away. I know the world is going crazy, but I can see you having my baby. Let's get away, mystery lady. I know the world is going crazy. I can see you having my baby. Let's get away. Let's get away, mystery lady. I know the world is going crazy.
Jamil, I remember in 2006 when you decided to go to Atlanta. I wasn't really excited about you going, but I saw that you were determined to go because when you were on your way, the car broke down and you got out of your car and got into your cousin's car and had your car towed back home and kept going to Atlanta. And then from there, I just saw how you began to bloom. And you had your ups, you had your downs. And even though I was here and you were there, I was still just a phone call away. And we talked every day. It's just been exciting to see how you've grown, how you've changed your way of thinking, how you've enlightened me in your journey, how you've shared so much knowledge, and you've taught me so much. You've taught me how to think for myself. You've taught me how to investigate for myself and seek out the truth. And that's something that I never did before. And I'm really grateful for that. It has taken a lot of courage for you to do the things you've done. You have made me proud. I'm excited for you. I love you. I admire you. You encourage me to pursue the best me that I can possibly be. In all that I do, I share with you. And I'm grateful for that, and I love you.
Mystery lady, I know the world is going crazy. I can see you having my baby. Let's get away. Let's get away, mystery lady. I know the world is going crazy.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody that's chiming into the Audacity podcast this Wednesday, February the 10th. I have a really, really special and important guest with me today on my show. We have no other than the master teacher himself, Dr. Phil True. Wrong one. All right. How you doing, brother? It's good to see your face, man. Finally see your face.
Yes, sir.
You've been putting work in on the Clubhouse app, brother. Woo. You are the talk of the town.
Uh-oh. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
That's an amazing thing, man. Well, I haven't heard of anybody with the level of information that you have since watching videos of Dr. John Henry Clark, Dr. Ben, and so many others. And when I heard you the first time, I was like, who is this brother here setting the internet on fire?
Oh, okay. I'm just trying to follow in the footsteps of my teachers. Yeah, those are my guys.
And those are Dr. Ben and Dr. John Henry Clark?
Yeah, Dr. Clark was my personal teacher, my mentor. Although my area of so called expertise is antiquities, which would be more in line with Dr. Ben, but Dr. Clark was really my teacher. My wife was his assistant. And so when she moved into his house and lived with him in New York, we got to be even closer. And then I also got access to him on a regular basis. And more importantly, I got access to his 50,000 book library.
Ooh-wee.
So from that, yeah, it was all they turned my world all the way around. So
I can only imagine, brother, because me watching them on YouTube, I was like, wow, it was electrifying just watching them. So to actually be in the presence of these brothers, man, that's amazing. And so one of the first questions that I have for you was, especially for the people who don't necessarily know who uh, those two specific brothers are, who is Dr. John Henry Clark and Dr. Ben? Who were those men?
Dr. Clark is really known pretty much as the godfather of African and African American history in America. He would be close to 100 or so now, but actually, a gentleman out of Columbus, Georgia, who went to New York. As he tells the story, he first went up and met Arthur Schoenberg and wanted to know the history of African people forthwith.
Mm-hmm.
And Arthur Schoenberg kind of turned him around and said, young man, the history of African people is the history of the oldest people in the world, and you got some work to do. And with that, he joined the Harlem History Club. John Jackson, which a lot of people may or may not know about, actually was Dr. Clark's kind of mentor and the one who turned Dr. Clark out.
Mm.
And from that, Dr. Clark wrote 72 books. He started the Puerto Rican and African Studies program at Hunter College in New York City. He was the researcher for Malcolm X. Every speech that Malcolm ever made, he came and saw Dr. Clark and got a pouch of information before any lecture or any speech he ever did. He worked with Kwame Nkrumah in Ghana, independent Ghana. He lived there and actually ran his newspaper and so on and so forth. He is the guy who is responsible for all of Sheikh Anta Diop or Diop's books being translated into English from French in America. And more importantly, all the people in the world that I know of that are now what I call the New Jack scholars, but scholars in the area of African American history, Pan African, etc. Dr. Clark is their mentor. That's the guy who trained everybody else. Asa Hilliard, Dr. Jeffries, you name it. Everyone else kind of comes under that tutelage. Dr. Ben is an Egyptologist. He's actually a Falashan Jew. So he's actually Jewish, of African and Puerto Rican descent. Started going to Egypt in 1939 and wrote Black Men of the Nile, Africa, Mother of Western Civilization, We the Black Jews, The Black Man's Bible. Did a whole piece on George G.M. James and Stolen Legacy. I think I have the only copy other than Louis Farrakhan of Dr. Clark's entire book. I'm sorry, Dr. Ben's entire book collection. I know I do because I bought two of the books when I was in his living room with him one day, and he had two copies. So I gave him some money and I left him one and I took the other one. So, and he actually is the guy that I actually kind of hone my studies after. Is we need to know who we are from the origin of man down to the Greco-Roman period when we were the dominant people and the greatest people on the earth, and from which everything derived. And that's the part of history we don't know. So what we have come to parrot and talk about daily is what the Greeks did. We talk about Kemet in some, kind of terms that we know. Kemet, or Egypt, as it wasn't called either of those. Those are both, kind of contemporary terms. Egypt is clearly a Greek term. But the history of what was called the Nihiletic Negro goes back a million years. So I try to pick it up from a million years ago, take it through the elemental hero age, the hero cult, which is the stage before we get to gods. Supernatural things were referred to originally as heroes: earth, air, fire, water, day, night, air. Those are the first superheroes and things that African people actually worshipped, because their life and their existence was predicated on understanding those natural phenomenons that they had to experience every day. See, what we don't think about or talk about is that early man didn't have tools. So when you think about yourself as being you in nature with no tools, no anything, then I think you will find that life looks a lot different than what we perceive it to be right now. There was no way that early man would imagine that he was, the baddest thing in the valley, and or God looked like him. That's a really contemporary idea, you
Right.
see. And also the idea of God being male. All of those are contemporary ideas.
Yes.
So what I try to do is go from hero cult. If you've been on Clubhouse, we've been doing stellar cult. Well, stellar cult, the time people studying and understanding time from the stars. Well, that period lasted 600,000 years. And the reason that it makes sense is if you understand the zodiac, which is 12, but the original zodiac was 7 constellations.
Learned that last night.
And each one of those constellations was 3,689 years long. Okay. And if you take 3,689 times 7, you will come up with the 25,827, which is what's called the Great Year. Now, that equates to the 12 zodiac houses we have now times 2150. But when they did all of this, 2 things you have to understand. The last of the 7 zodiac signs in their calendar was Hercules, which is still a constellation in the heavens today. It hasn't gone anywhere. And when Hercules actually fades away and they start the new zodiac year or great year, that becomes, zodiac is equated with the man. Well, it's an astrological thing. It's not a real man. But when you flip the story over, you humanize the story, you make it into a man. Now you have the deluge, the so-called great flood where God floods the world. Well, that was really the end of that zodiac constellation going down into the heavens. And they called all of those, when the era ended, they called that the deluge. Okay. So when you go back and unwind this story, it not only makes sense, but it's still there today. Now, all of that being said, then I do that. From there, we go into lunar cult. Lunar cult, which is when you're telling time by the moon. Well, that era was 50,000 years long. And you know that today by Moses, the sign for lunar would be the moon, one of the what do you call it, the quarter moon, and a star. Well, that's the symbol for Islam today, right?
Crescent moon and star.
Yeah, crescent moon. So, and now we are solar cult people, so we tell time by the sun. Now, the reason you know that this information could not have come from us, which is, and the solar people are 100,000 years old, is that if in fact the great year or the zodiac takes 26,000 years to happen once, and you've only seen it 3 times, the odds of you knowing what all that is pretty remote.
Yeah.
But if you were the stellar cult boys and you've been doing this for 600,000 years, you've seen it many, many times, then it would make sense. Plus, you're studying the stars. We're not studying the stars today.
Yeah.
So a good example is this. A lot of people have equated all of this information to what they call Kemet and dynastic Egypt going back 3200 BC, even if you stretch it back as far as a few scholars to 6,000, say 10,000 BC. Let's even be generous. Well, you have 10,000 BC and 2000 AD is only 12,000 years. So how would you know about something that took 26,000 years to happen if you only been here for 12,000 years? It gets worse. The bottom half of the zodiac, Libra, Sagittarius, Scorpio, those constellations are only seen in the southern hemisphere. So you can't see them in Egypt. You can't see them in Greece, Sumer, Babylon, any of those places. You surely couldn't see them in Greece, Rome, England, and America. And that half of it is 13,000 years. So that alone should tell us there's something wrong with the story we've been given. And that's what I try to talk to people about and at least make them think about it. And see, the part that's non-negotiable is the zodiac. We know we have that information.
Yeah.
So that's not, well, I don't believe it. That's a fact. We have that information.
Right.
And we know it takes 25,827 years to occur once. So if you only been here for 6,000 years, according to the creation story, how the hell would you know this? It hasn't happened. You see what I'm saying?
Talk to him, Doc. Talk to him.
Well, I'm just saying. So, any rate, so I'm trying to get. Can I actually say what I normally say?
Yeah, man. Let's go.
Oh, okay. No, you know me. I can get kind of crazy. And I don't want you
don't get crazy.
I don't want you to run off your own podcast. Okay, but. My favorite saying is we have to deniggerize ourselves.
Yeah.
We've got to get off this bus and go back and understand that we are the people that created everything. The world started with us. History is the story of mankind. Well, if the first people was us, I don't care if you even go for the okie doke that white people are spreading around, the polygenetic theory that, they started out as black, but then the Asian guy and the white guy developed, which is nonsense. You are those people. You went to Asia and became the Shang dynasty. You went to India and become the Darwinians. You went to Europe, became the Caucasoids. The little guy in Ireland that we call that, the little fighting Irishman.
The leprechaun.
Yeah, the leprechaun.
Yeah.
That was the pygmies that went up there and inhabited the place initially, which are the first people on the planet Earth. That's where everybody came from.
Now, were they called the
tall people?
Were they called
the Twa and the Hutu?
Twa, yeah.
The Twa.
Twa,
okay. But, if you let somebody else tell your story, knowledge is power.
Yeah.
Power is the ability to define reality and have other people accept your definition though it were their own.
Yeah.
Now that's how we got in the position we're in. We have someone else defining our reality, telling us who we are. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I heard people talking about today, black history, we're black. Every people on the planet except us get their name from a landmass.
Yeah.
Chinese, Russians, Japanese. We're the only ones that get our name from our oppressor. And then we run around and articulate it like it's real. There's no black land on this planet. You were Africans until you got in the middle of the Atlantic. Now you turned into Negroes, niggers, jigaboos, black people. I don't get it.
Yeah.
But as long as you let someone else tell your story, that's how it's going to go.
Yeah.
The same thing with people in America being Indians. India's on the other damn side of the earth. So I'm sure the people over here wouldn't have been calling themselves Indians. Hell, this is America. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I've had some young people talking about, well, the indigenous people were Hispanic. How the hell are you going to be Hispanic until you have some Spaniards over here? That didn't come till Estevanico. Yeah, I mean, give me a break. let me slow down. Let me
so I love it. So you mentioned something that I want to circle back to when you mentioned to deniggerize yourself. Like there is a video on YouTube and it's called The Nigger Factory. and it shows how all these different elements of this pieced together culture that we call Black culture, from the music, from our religious systems, to how we eat, to how we socialize, like that's been planted in us. That's not ours, but we've adopted and be like, yeah, look at this. But a good portion of it is just detrimental. Like from the food, from the music, from the media, from, you know, we when you look at Black people or African people across the diaspora, we are like the only people that have worship a deity that looks like the person that colonized us. And, you know, what are some key steps for somebody that's just because, you know, you speak about, because people will ask you in Clubhouse, how do I get this information to my family? Because we love our family, but we have a lot of our family that are just really brainwashed into believing everything they've been taught, you know. And what are some small steps? You know, the Great Wall of China wasn't built overnight. That's one of the phrases that they say. It took brick by brick. What are some of the small things that one can do to sort of, you know, feed a little bit to the mind to try to wake it up?
The first thing I try to tell everyone that's on the planet, you must ask a critical question. What is your purpose? Why are you here? And I can assure you that you're not here to serve white people. So why did God, or whatever it is that is that creative force that made everything, why did it put you here? And once you stop and analyze that on more than a surface level, okay, that's a serious question, because you're betting this lifetime and the next lifetime on this. So this is a real big bet.
Mm-hmm.
Now, once you figure out that the thing that you would love to do, that you enjoy doing every day, that comes easy to you, is probably more in line with your purpose. And that requires you listening to your inner voice. That's that God essence in you, okay? Mm-hmm. Which we have been told not to do. We do analytical deduction and critical thinking and all. You know, they said the most dangerous Negroes on the planet are those with PhDs. The further you go up in the miseducation system, the more dangerous you become, because you lose your culturation and your identity to who you really are and what your real intentions should be. Mm-hmm. But what I tell people is try to line up what you would love to do if you had all the money in the world and make that your vocation.
Yeah.
History and art are passions of mine. And that's also how I make a living. So my life is fun. Mm-hmm. It's enjoyable. Things I do, like, the first time I was on Clubhouse, I talked for 18 straight hours. Now, there's no way you're going to talk for 18 straight hours about something if you don't enjoy it.
Right.
And I didn't take a break. I mean, I didn't get up and go to the bathroom. I didn't do anything. We didn't have lunch. We was getting down, So, and then I followed up the next day with 12 hours. So, but for me, now keep in mind, I was born and raised in what I call Whiteapolis. I'm from Minneapolis, Minnesota. It doesn't get much whiter than where I come from. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I'm also 73 years old. So I was born in the 40s, 1947 to be exact. So I've been around, I've seen a few things. And there was nothing even remotely close to African history and things like that when I was growing up in school. Matter of fact, we go all the way back to Little Black Sambo and, some of those kind of things when I was in school. You see?
You got taught, so that's what you was getting taught in school?
Yeah, yes, sir. Yeah, that was still in school when I was in elementary school. Yes, sir.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. So there was nothing around me that would give me the idea that African people were great or that had done anything. I mean, the only thing I saw about African people was Tarzan, and they lived in huts, and, this white person came and saved them, So when you get that kind of socialization and indoctrination and culturation every day, there's no way in hell you're trying to be African.
Yeah.
You see? So I spent all of my life through kindergarten through 12th grade, in that kind of a mindset. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because I graduated from high school in 1965. So the Black Power movement and all those things were just starting to take hold. Martin Luther King, Malcolm. I was around when all that was going on. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people from where I came from, because it was always integrated. We always went to school with white people. There wasn't enough Black people in Minneapolis to separate us. In many of the classes I was in, especially if you're talking about geometry and some, biology and some of those kind of classes, there would be one or two or three Black folks in the class at the most. There wasn't, it's not like I had a whole room full of Black folks that I could study with. It wasn't that kind of movie.
Mm-hmm.
So when you come up like that, I never got indoctrinated with white people being superior or different from me, because I interacted with them all day long. My mother was heavily involved in politics. So back then, this is before your time, but Walter Mondale, who goes on to be vice president, and even Hubert Humphrey, who's also vice president. Now, this is going back, like I say, this is before your time. But I remember those guys being in my mother's living room discussing politics before they became mayor of Minneapolis, let alone vice president of the United States.
Mm.
So I had this kind of interaction all day long in my house, you see. And then my mother, my aunties and that, they were all a part of the civil rights movement when it first started. Because there was no, you sat on a bus with everybody else. There was no, what I'm saying? We didn't have any of that. You could go to the store. You did in Minnesota. You did everything white people did.
So what triggered you? What triggered you to seek the knowledge?
I actually, in the late 60s, early 70s, I moved to Los Angeles, California. And by that time, I was a engineer with IBM. I worked for Control Data. I was tech specialist in disk systems. All the jobs I ever had in corporate America, I was either the first or the only. And after a few occasions of training Caucasians and getting them promoted over me, I finally just one day said, I've had enough, and I started my own company. But along the way, what really happened, my upstairs neighbor, whose name originally was Tommy Anderson. He was a former Black Panther, he and his brother. And he changed his name to Jaja Nkrumah. But I used to wake up every morning to Message to the Black Man from Malcolm. Every morning he played this. Now, this is what crazy. He was with an Asian lady and I was with an Italian lady. But this is what I listened to every day. So finally I went upstairs and knocked on his door and said, hey, man, what's up? And so we got to be the very best friends. He was actually a black belt in karate, and our lives, we were like brothers every day since that time. And then in the 80s, 1981, 82, I started a computer software company called Computerized Educational Resources in Los Angeles. We made authoring software, which, because my background was that I was a computer engineer, I knew you couldn't protect and stop people from copying stuff. So what I did is came up with a design that we could change the database every year, and I didn't worry about you stealing it. And the first software I ever created was Ebonics software to teach Black dialect speakers standard English. I ain't going, etc. And so we started out in there, and Jaja made the first Black history software. He took this design and put Black history in it. And once I looked at the information he put in there, I was embarrassed, because growing up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, I knew nothing about the history of African people at all. So I then began to do research so that we could update the database. And in doing that, started going to the library, started getting books, read, Destruction of Black Civilization, Chancellor Williams, Introduction to African Civilization, John Jackson, Diop, some of the, then I got into Asa Hilliard stuff, Dr. Ben. And then I wound up going to New York and visiting my cousin Louis Hayes, who is a world-renowned jazz drummer. And Louis turned me on to Dr. Ben's book, Black Men of the Nile. And now keep in mind, I'm a computer engineer, so physics and that was something I knew from the computer business. And Boolean equations, all that kind of crap. I learned all that in school. So when I sat down and started looking at the technology of what these people had done, I was hot because I was told this was done by white folks. Greeks did all this. Well, then I find out that, there's calculus that was developed by African people 5,000 years before Thales and all these boys come along. So, I'm now angry at what I had been not told. Mm-hmm. So as I began to investigate and do more and more research, we took Dr. Clark's African Kings and Queens stuff. You ever seen the Budweiser posters that Budweiser put out years ago? The Kings and Queens. You familiar with it? That's before your time.
Okay. It's been a minute. I don't know, man.
Okay, no problem. I realize that most of the people in the audience are not as old as I am. But at any rate, Dr. Clark is actually the author of the data. And then Budweiser hired artists to draw the pictures. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so I talked to everybody else, and I finally went to Dr. Clark and said, I want to computerize your information. Now, keep in mind, we're talking about computerizing stuff back in the days of 5 1/4 inch floppy disks. Yeah. This is not even 3 1/2. Yeah. That's how far back I go. Okay. And we took all that information and put it on floppy disks. And I literally put it in the LA schools, Inglewood, Compton, all of those schools. And then I went to New York City and I got it approved in New York City for all their schools. This is in 1988, 87.
Probably like 1 million floppies too, wasn't it?
Well, no, it was actually about
they couldn't store that much.
20. Yeah. But what happened, because keep in mind, you can author it. So you can change all this on the fly. And there was people like at Santa Monica College, they made it into German. People made it into math. You could put anything in it as long as you followed the design, of how to put the data in. It didn't care what the content was. Mm-hmm. So when I got it in New York City, and it was Dr. Clark and Dr. Ben stuff, well, good and well that their books weren't in any of the New York schools. That was not happening. So that then led to all of the other kind of scholars paying attention, like, oh, what's up here? Because what we found out early on is when you create something for schools, do not call it curriculum, call it a reference document. And then you skip that whole curriculum committee and that 7-year process of getting approved as curriculum, which you'll never do. Okay. Because the people that head up those committees in every state don't look like you and I for the 90% of the time. Mm-hmm. So that led us to being able to put this information in every major school district in the United States. And then we went from that to partnering with IBM, because I'm a former IBMer. And we made the first electronic textbook for Simon & Schuster called The African American Experience. It was a globe book. We literally made that on a CD-ROM. Mm-hmm. Then the next thing we made was Lessons from History by Jawanza Kunjufu. And IBM, Radio Shack, all these companies started selling all this stuff. So it took off. Al Gore was the vice president then, and I had offices on the university campus of the University of Minnesota. And he came to visit us, and I was writing columns in the newspaper on history, a bunch of stuff. Any rate, we became the largest Black educational software company in the world in the mid-90s. But because I was very militant, back then the kids called me Philicon. I've calmed down a lot since I got older, and I'm still not very calm, but I'm way better than I used to be. Okay.
Philicon.
No, Philicon.
Philicon.
Yeah. Between me and Farrakhan. So it was
okay.
Yeah. Pay attention, man. Yeah. So, and then I was on the lecture circuit, and so I got kind of labeled as a cross between Dr. Clark and Asa Hilliard, which was quite a compliment. And from that, I met Dr. Clark in 88, I think, something like that. And I asked him if I could follow in his footsteps. He said something I'll never forget. He said, many people have said this, but few people are willing to do the work. Now, I did not know at the time this man had 50,000 books in his personal library. So in my naivete, I said, okay, I have this company, I have this money, I have this time, this is what we're doing. I'm all in. And so we began to then become really good friends. He really, started giving me information that probably he didn't give to most other people, because I was too stupid to know not to challenge him. I didn't know who he was. So he had me read World's Great Men of Color by J.A. Rogers. Okay. Now that book at the time was, it's a little dated. So I went back and challenged him on a couple things, and either he thought I was crazy or he took a liking to me. So he said, yeah, that's true. Some of it's dated, new information has come to light, etc. So I'm sitting in his house one day talking to him, and I asked him, why don't you ever talk about religion? Okay. You guys talk about everything else, and religion is the opiate of the masses. Religion is the thing that has bound us up more in the slave mentality than anything else we do. And he told me, get you a 6-pack and, some whiskey, and you go drink this and you forget about that idea. All right. And, I kind of blew it off. I'm like, okay. But I never really stopped pursuing that idea. Okay. So I began digging real deep into religion and the history of religion. So he told me, if you really want to understand this, you must read a book by Gerald Massey called Ancient Egypt, Light of the World. And this is 1,000 pages, 2 volumes. This is some serious reading. Okay. This book was written in 1881 in London, England. And for the first 10 years or so, that's the book I really taught out of, because no one had talked about the history of African people on the level Massey had done it. But I also had a book that many of the scholars of my day used, was called Signs and Symbols of Primordial Man, which is an Albert Churchward book. And I used that a lot. He also wrote The Origin and Evolution of Freemasonry, connected with the origin and evolution of human race, the origin and evolution of primitive man, the origin and evolution of human race. But the one book I had in my library, but I never read it, was The Origin and Evolution of Religion. And finally one day, because, Dr. Clark and my wife, everybody said, leave religion alone. So I really, for the most part, I danced around it. I didn't really attack it. I started reading The Origin and Evolution of Religion. It turned out to be, in one book, the best history book on African people I'd ever seen. Because this is the one book. Now, keep in mind, Dr. Albert Churchward is a racist white man in London, England. He's never been in America. He's not talking to black folk. He's the head of the royal surgeons in England. He's a 30th degree York Mason, and all of the books he wrote were to his Masonic colleagues in London. Okay. So he goes back 820,000 years. I hadn't seen anyone that looked like you and I even come close to going back that far about who we are, and the fact that they acknowledge these were these little African people that we call pygmies. And so as I went through this book 20, 30, 40 times, I now, as you know, if you follow me on Clubhouse, that's the one book I tell everyone to read, because no one covers the subject matter in the detail that he covers it in, and breaks it down chronologically the way he does. And the point that I try to tell people is, think about who he was and when he did this. He had nothing, there was nothing that would make him do this if this information wasn't true. Because he's talking about the initial, he has a map in not only the Freemasonry book, but also in Signs and Symbols of Africa, showing that all the people started around the Great Lakes, Lake Victoria, Lake Tanganyika, and Kenya, Uganda, Central Africa, where they said the oldest fossil remains of man come from.
Mm-hmm.
And he refers to those primitive people as the pygmies. And when he shows you the migration routes out of there, he says that the people that went to West Africa, South Africa, everywhere except down the Nile, he calls them the true Negroes. So he's delineating the people that wind up in the Americas, etc., as not being the same people who develop high civilization, called the Niletic Negroes, who are the people that then go on and establish Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if people know about Western culture, all of Europe and all of the Americas is predicated on the Egyptian model.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the thing we need to understand is all of these are Negroes, meaning these were all black people any way you spin it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So when you follow then what happened, you just go down the river. So you're starting at the mountain and you're going to the sea. So when you leave, say, Kenya, you go through the Sudan, you go through Ethiopia, you finally get down to what you know to be Upper and Lower Egypt. Well, most people don't realize that Egypt is a colony of Ethiopia. And all of this information actually comes from these little people that started in Central Africa 1 million years ago. So that's what I do now. I really focus on that information, the fact that we need to study that information. And for example, when I spoke at Northwestern University a few years back, I spoke to the graduate school. When I was getting ready to go down there and the people, was negotiating the contract, etc., they said to me, if you're coming down here with Dr. Clark and Dr. Ben's information, don't come because we don't accept it. Okay. Now we're talking about Northwestern University in Evanston, Illinois. So I said, okay. But I took Massey and Churchward and Anacalyptus, Godfrey Higgins, all these books, Swaller de Lubetz's books, Sacred Science, The Temple and Man, Symbol and Symbolic. Now, these are all white scholars.
Mm-hmm.
So even, with that, there was no way for them to deny their scholarship because this is not black people saying this.
Yeah.
So the question then becomes, if this is what you guys said, and these books are over 100 years old, how come you didn't tell anybody? Because you're not teaching this in your own universities and schools, let alone our schools. Again, you got to go back to the zodiac piece. The zodiac, that knocks everything, that wipes out all your church stuff, everything you learned in every university, everything you've been taught. If what that is true, then everything you've been taught is not true. I give you, here's a mind blower. So your audience has something to really go think about tomorrow.
I think you've been doing a good job at blowing minds.
Oh no, we getting ready to light the fire now. Okay. They said the Great Pyramid of Giza is 269,870 years old. Now you think about that. If that's true, everything you've been told about every subject you've ever been told anything about is a lie. If that building is almost 300,000 years old, there's nobody on the planet but you. You haven't gone anywhere, okay? And they said in order for you to build a building, you had to record, you documented the zodiac, that 25,827. You documented that and recorded that event 10 times. That's 260,000 years. And you can't calculate a year till you build a pyramid. See, most people don't realize the base of the pyramid is what gives you a 365 and a quarter day calculation to begin with. But the pyramid itself is the Bible in stone. It's a replica of the human brain. The pineal gland is the king's chamber. The pituitary gland is the queen's chamber. This is the spiritual parents of the son Jesus born in your solar plexus of every human being walking the earth at puberty, 12 years old. So the guy you're looking for out in space actually is right inside of you. Yeah, let's keep going. Saying with the house is on fire. All right. Most people think their heart is in the middle of their chest. That's what they tell you. Okay. So my question is, what does that thing in the middle of your chest do?
Pumps blood.
Thank you. It's a blood pump. Ain't no damn heart. It's a blood pump. You can take it out and replace it with a machine and you're still here. Okay. But if you were to pull up a picture of the brain and the spinal cord, you would find that the cerebellum of your skull, which is the bottom back of your head, is your heart. Your eyes and ears are connected. It has feelings. And when that stops, you're dead. Oh, it gets worse. Let's keep, like I say, we're on fire now. So if you don't invite me back, I'll know why. Heaven is at the top of your head. Heaven's right up here. Okay. The cerebrum of your head is where heaven and God resides. Okay. And everybody on the earth understands this except Christians because they cover that part of their head. Think about it.
Yeah.
Huh? Isn't that true?
Yeah. Every
when the Pope in Rome
head,
takes off the fish's head of Dagon, that mitre is a fish's mitre. That's because he is the god of the Piscean age, the two fishes. Wasn't Jesus the fisherman? He did everything with two fishes. That's because we're talking about the Piscean age. We're not talking about some guy. We're leaving the age of Pisces. We're entering the age of Aquarius. That's the water bearer. That's female issues. And that's information. That's why what we're doing right now, global warming, if you know where you are in that 26,000 years, you will know what's going to happen to you. And if you've been around as long as we have, you probably should go ask us, because the guys you're getting your instructions from, they just got here. They've been around 2,500 years, not 25,000. I have a book on my shelf right now. It's called Men of the Stars. They tell you Thales is the first great astronomer. Okay. So let's see if that works. Thales is a Greek guy. Greece is north of Egypt. So on the other side of the Mediterranean. All right. So if you're looking up at the sky, you tell me how in the hell he could see anything in the southern hemisphere.
Yeah, they don't have telescopes.
I don't care if you got a telescope or not. You can't see over the curvature of the earth. Okay. So you are going to only see things in the northern hemisphere. You'll never see the constellations in the southern hemisphere. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, gotcha.
And we have them. Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, though we have them. They are in the southern hemisphere. There's an app that we talked about on anyone has an iPhone. I forget the name of the app, but there's an app for $2.99 that you can literally get on your phone, Sky Guide. That's $2.99 you could ever buy. Spend.
It's a constellation app, right?
You can point your phone at the sky and it'll show you all the constellations.
Yeah.
So take your phone and point it towards the floor and you'll see Scorpio. That means you're looking at the constellations down by the southern pole star in south of South America. You cannot see those constellations from where we are ever. And that half is 13,000 years. See, that's what I'm saying. We can make white people get off the bus. Hey, like, dude, you shouldn't even tell your children this shit, let alone tell us. Why you tell your children these lies? That you ought to be ashamed of yourself. Pythagoras developed the theorem for a triangle. The damn Beerling is an applied geometry, 32 stories high, 5-ton rocks in the center of planet Earth. How the hell did he develop? That's not a theorem. And plus, the building, even if you go by contemporary time, is 3,000 years before the guy is born. What the hell is wrong with us?
Yeah.
Pythagoras lives in 560 BC. Even forget about the date I just gave you on the pyramid. Let's use the dates they let you have with Imhotep and Khufu in the third dynasty. That's 2780. That's 2,300 years before the man is born. They built the building. How the hell did he develop the theorem for that? And they do this in every geometry class everywhere in the world today, bro. See, if you knew what I knew, you'd show up to school an hour early. You'd be waiting for the teachers to get there.
It'd be a misunderstanding, huh?
Oh, please. I'm like, dude, if you don't know any more than that, you need to go back to college and get your money back.
So what?
You know, we would have. Go ahead.
What? So it took you a long time to come into this information based off of the indoctrination. I have a similar story. I grew up in Indianapolis, Indiana, in a town. It was called Irvington, Indianapolis, and that was once the headquarters of the Ku Klux Klan. So I was, in some cases, sometimes the only black kid in. Like, I played basketball for this Catholic school, and I was the only black guy on the team. And it took me a while to come into the desire to want to learn, because you know, all the images that you are shown is, you know, African people with pot bellies and ribs showing with flies hanging over their face and things of that nature. And it wasn't until I went to college and started taking 300 level African civilization courses by African men who have traveled the globe, and they got their degrees around the globe. Francis Mayumba was my first teacher, and he hurt everybody's feelings and he didn't care. And then that sort of started the thirst for information. And then once the internet wasn't that big when I was in college, it was just growing. And then when I moved to Atlanta, I started learning about Dr. John Henry Clark and Dr. Ben. And that's when the fire was sort of lit. And I often would have conversations with my elders, and I was like, how come y'all never told us this stuff? But then I realized they couldn't have told us this stuff, because majority of the information, most of the intel that we were moving off of was basically slavery intel. It was intel from people that weren't allowed to read, and all the things that they've, you know, taken and made to where it works. They had to, was based out of necessity and the need to survive. And so when I think about my adolescence, and what you're talking about is what is something that you wish that somebody would have shared with you? Maybe not the whole grand scheme of things. You know, you're a walking library. And so before you get to that point, what are some of the things that you wish that you would have learned just as a child?
Well, I would like to have known the history of African people and people of color. Keep in mind, the first half of my life, I was with ladies that don't look like me. So, you know, it took a serious transformation for me to come around and understand and like who I am and, you know, get back to black, as they say. Mm-hmm. Because in the world I come from, most everyone is with a Caucasian lady. I mean, when you go to Minnesota, when you get off the plane, they give you a white girl. That's you know, welcome to Minnesota. Mm-hmm. You follow me? So, you know, you have a lot of people in Minnesota that refer to themselves as biracial. Mm-hmm. Now, you think about how dangerous an idea that is. If you're biracial, that means that you're not black. So that means you're better than you're black. That if you're half white, then you're not black. So you're better. You see? And they literally have that as a category when you register your children for school. That's been going on for 40, 50 years that I know of. That's a racial category. Okay. Now, you think about the psychology of that idea. Because I can assure you that if you look like you and I don't care how white your mama is, when you take your ass to Germany, they're going to let you know you're black. Okay. But in Minnesota, you can be half German. You follow me? Mm-hmm. And you get the privileges of being half German.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah, no, this is serious. This is real serious, because not only is that prevalent now, it's pervasive. Most of the children now in Minnesota come from mixed relationships. You find very few kids in Minnesota now that have pure two black parents. That's rare. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you think about then that whole dynamic of all these kids running around calling themselves biracial. So they're not black like you.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have to go back to Francis Welsing and coloration. If you black, get back. If you brown, stick around. If you yellow, muller. If you white, you all right. See, we still playing those psychological games. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So if you are a lighter hue of black, then you're not quite as bad as them real dark black people, them real, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And if you got straighter hair, you follow me?
Mm-hmm.
So it's dangerous.
Yeah, yeah. And colorism is something that we keep kicking around as a group. You know, me of light skin, I've for 42 years almost. It slowed down within the last 3 or 4 years, but for the majority of my life, I would always be made fun of because I'm light skinned. And I'm like, listen, when it goes down, we all in the
Well,
you know.
we seem to forget something. You're not catching hell because you're Baptist and Catholic. You're catching hell because you're black. See, the game of white supremacy, because they're only 10% of the world population, they're not confused about what they have to do to survive and maintain power. But if they can keep us divided, there's a billion Africans on this planet, a billion with a B.
Mm-hmm.
You're not a minority by any stretch of the imagination. But if I can keep the people in the Caribbean separated from the people in North America, separated from the people in South America, separated from the people on the continent, and then I can break all of them up into tribes and little groups. Because keep in mind, at the Berlin Convention is when they divided up Africa. There's people in Europe divided it up and made all these little countries that we now identifying with. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There is a video that I want everyone listening to your podcast to look at. And seeing it's still Black History Month, this is on YouTube. I want you to take it to your school, saying everybody wants to talk about slavery. Take this up there and have them play this. I promise you, you won't have any more discussion about slavery. This is by Basil Davison. This is a Caucasian author that has written many books. He's written some very good books on the African slave trade. And Dr. Clark highly recommend this gentleman for his scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
But he has a YouTube video specifically called the Magnificent Cake. I want everyone to look at it. And I guarantee you, not only will you be heated under the collar, but then I want you to take it up to your school, especially if you're in a school that people in the classes that don't look like us are teaching history, etc. But no, take this period. Just take it up to the school and say, I want to see what the reaction is because I found this video on slavery.
Mm-hmm.
I promise you, as sure as I'm talking to you, that they'll only play it once. I guarantee that. Because when you see what this guy finds when he's on the continent, so he's talking to what they did, how they did it, the brutality of what they did, and he's talking to people who are the remnants of the people they did it to. So they're still talking to some of the Africans who experienced this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Hey, you will not be the same once you look at this video, I promise you.
So I gotta go ahead. I'm sorry.
And then follow that up with a video from Dr. Asa Hilliard III, who's right there from Atlanta. Okay. It's called Free Your Mind.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interview he did with Listerveld Middleton. And he talks about the whole psychology of race and what they did and how they did it and how it still permeates today. And I promise you, these two videos will change your life.
Mm.
Now, if you want to get real crazy, there's one more, but this one will probably get you run off of your podcast. For all the good people out there that are still in church, pull up a video on YouTube called the Flavian, Flavian dynasty. And when you get through looking at those 3 videos, you tell me you still believe what you thought you believed. I guarantee you'll have to reevaluate what you think you know. And you're going to be a little warm under the collar. Don't get me wrong. But this is not Phil's folly. This is not something I said. These are, for the most part, the Flavian dynasty. These are white scholars from Oxford and universities in Europe. Okay. So you need to understand what you're about to run into. Constantine was a Flavian. That's his family. So you need to find out what they did. Because what you're practicing now is called Christendom. It has nothing to do with Christianity and or God. I'm just saying.
So would you say by learning that because I got a comment they want to know the solutions to our problems today. Would that essentially be it starts with knowing thyself, with knowing your history first, so that you know how to, what moves to make? Because I had a conversation with a brother today regarding the NFL and how so the Super Bowl just happened, and so he chimed in on a post that I posted, and he was like, but he's 33. He started giving stats, and I was like, I don't really care about the stats. And he was like, the NFL is not going to hire him back. And I was like, I'm not necessarily concerned about him getting that job back. What I'm concerned with is supporting a publicized racist institution that uses 90 some odd percent of black talent, but shushes one of their talents from telling the world while he's on this platform that, hey, they're able to kill us with immunity. Take a look at this. And they shushed him. So I was like, I don't really care if he gets a job. And so the thing is when you learn who you once were, as Dr. John Henry Clark put it, now you know who you're supposed to be. And when you have pride in yourself, you don't accept crap. Like you can sell used cars all you want, but I don't have to buy it. You know what I'm saying? So, and out of your years, what do you think would be some just basic steps on how can we start to, as you put, deniggerize ourselves so we can start to be the solution?
Well,
because nobody's going to do it for us.
That's true. No one is going to give you power. Power is something you take. But the first thing I would say people need to do, and I know everyone's not going to do this, but it's a thought. Whatever you're doing for someone else, think about creating that same job for yourself, meaning you own the company. Mm-hmm. That'd be the first step. Okay. I left white corporate America in 1981 as a successful, high-paid computer engineer in LA. I put the stuff in at JPL, NASA. I literally had a system that the B-1 bomber is developed on. I had that in my living room. And I walked away from all of that in 1981, and I've never looked back. I've never considered working for anyone other than myself. And with that being said, then you control your own destiny, number one. I put it like this. If someone is telling you when to come to work, when to have vacation, how much you're going to make, and has, the ability to get rid of you when they choose, you're a dressed up slave. You're not free. And the people in the NFL and all these, how is it that we're, like you said, 80 to 90% of the people in the NFL, and we don't own one team? What is wrong with that picture?
Yeah, especially when the reason why we don't own it, what I learned is because they won't vote us in to be an owner. Like
if you stop playing, they wouldn't have a damn league. What are you talking about?
That too, that part.
There would be no NFL if you stop playing.
Yeah.
There would be no NBA if you weren't participating. So how the hell you talking about they gonna vote you in? Are you serious?
Yeah.
I wouldn't vote you in either. Hell, why would I? You're a damn minstrel. I pay you, you entertain my ass. That's what you here to do, okay? And as long as you don't know any better and you continue to be my clown, okay, then that's what you're gonna do.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna change. Why would I change that? I'm making billions. I'm glad you give you $100 million and I made 100 billion. Are you please?
Yeah.
But see, if you are content with kibbles and bits, we always settle for crumbs. How much time we got left? I'm gonna light your fire for real.
we done went over an hour.
Okay, all right. So this might be your last broadcast. Here it goes. All right. Here's the question I asked Jesus. What exactly did we do to you as African people that you hate us so much you won't let us have first of anything? Yeah, I know it got real quiet. You see what I'm saying? Because that's a hard pill to swallow right there. Think about it. All the wealth in the world's in Africa, and you don't control any of it. Cobalt, you can't be on this meeting we're on right now without that. You can't use your cell phone without it. And a white guy owns the mine. What is wrong with this picture? Diamonds are found in Africa. There ain't no diamond mines in Europe.
Yeah.
All these things are yours and you don't control any of them. And then we run around. We fought for years to get the chains off our neck. And now we got people out here think they doing something. They buying 5-inch chains, putting them back on their neck.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't even, because don't get me started. I mean, how long did we try to get a head rag off of our head from Aunt Jemima? And your favorite Negro, who's now selling Subway sandwiches, didn't he put head rag back on at Aunt Jemima's shit?
Who's that? I don't watch TV. I don't know.
Oh, huh?
Who was that?
Deion Sanders. Don't you remember that head rag he used to run around in?
Yeah. Prime time.
Man. Yeah, thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, how long did we fight to get that head rag off of Aunt Jemima? Years. Centuries.
Didn't they just take her off of?
Yes, they just did. Okay.
Like last year or something?
No, last week. Okay.
Last week.
Uncle Ben. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And now what's even scarier, because young people don't know this, we are doing the same thing today and think we got it going on as the minstrels in back in Al Jolson era, blackface.
Mm-hmm.
Red lips, pink yarn in our hair, blue. Yeah, I mean, come on. You see what I'm saying? But because you don't know your history, you will repeat it.
Yeah. History repeats.
You see what I'm saying?
Because you don't know
there.
Yeah.
We are there, bro. We have went back at least 50 years. And I'm old enough I can tell you this because I've seen it in my lifetime. Mm-hmm. We have regret. See, the thing we have to understand, and I hate to use the street vernacular, but I want to keep this real. If you trick for $1, he prints money. So you have to are you a $2 hole or are you a $200,000 hole? Mm. It's Bob, run the press another 5 minutes. This one wants a little more money. Huh? Mm. So we go out here, we think oh man, I got money now. I'm rich. I'm not even going to tell you what clown that we have playing for a role model said that. Okay. It's all relative. Because if Donald Trump had this guy's money, he would kill himself right now. And Donald Trump's broke. All right. He is broke. And if he had the guy's money I'm talking about, he would take that hair off, take that orange paint off, and strangle himself in front of you. Okay.
Okay, Dr. Phil.
All right.
Before we get off here, man.
I know I won't be back, but we having fun today.
No,
all right?
brother. No, don't you say that, my brother.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But before we go, man, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about your beautiful wife. When we did our sound check, I was sort of introduced to your wife, and the black man, black woman paradigm is something. It's one of the most powerful attributes of our liberation, and that's why it's been so attacked systemically, psychologically. But you guys, I mean, I don't know how long you've been married, but how were y'all? And you did mention that she used to work under Dr. John Henry Clark. So how was that dynamic through the years? Because for her to work with a guy like Dr. John Henry Clark, that means she's pretty knowledgeable too.
Right, right. Well, that's my other half, my better half. She not only keeps me on the straight and narrow,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm a Libra, so I can get, as you can see, I can get out there. So she
Yeah,
had to
you
like
can
reel
turn
me
up real
back.
quick.
Woo-hoo. Yes, sir. And I've
Look,
done some crazy things in my life too, so I don't even want to tell you about some of that. But anyway, but we've been married 32 years,
okay.
and I would not be who I am if it wasn't for her and my daughters and my granddaughters. I have 5 girls in my house.
Mm-hmm.
So I have my wife, Amy, the daughter that's on Clubhouse with me.
Mm-hmm.
I have Jasmine, my granddaughter. I have another granddaughter, Alex, and then I have a great granddaughter. And Jasmine and Lauren live here with us.
Mm-hmm.
So I have this many women around me every day.
Mm-hmm.
So they keep me in check and on balance and focused, whether I like to be or not. They handle my bank account, so they know how much money I have when the deposit goes in. If my wife can't get it, she'll send the grandbaby or the great grandbaby after. It's like, hey, we already know he'll give you anything, because Lauren, the 5-year-old, she runs me. So yeah, I'm fortunate that in the last 40 years, I'm doing what we're talking about. I live a good life. I've learned enough and matured enough so I can distinguish my wants from my needs.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't understand when you can live with your wants and not be driven by or your needs
Needs,
and
yeah.
not be driven by your wants. Life gets a lot simpler. See, when you get
That's heavy
older,
right there.
well, when you get older, you start to downsize. Think about it. When you get older, you're trying to get rid of stuff. But
Yeah.
when you're young, you're accumulating all this debt. Okay. Well, now you got to run on his Ferris wheel. And that's what he wants you to do. The more indebted you get, the more that you're going to have to stay in his clog and do what he tells you to do. You see?
Mm-hmm.
But when you can separate those two things, that's when, all this equation changes. I not only don't interact with white people all that much, but I don't do a lot of business with white people. I don't have to, you see? So they really don't bother me. And then, even when I'm in their space, they respect people who not are knowledgeable. Matter of fact, when you know something they don't know, they'll be the first ones to get in your stuff and find out. They hate for you to know something they don't know. So when you start talking about things like I talk about, they're the first people to start investigating that, because they never want you to catch them like that twice. You see, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. We're the only ones that we can say something to you, and next week I got to tell you the same thing again. You don't go find out, well, hey, I need to put that in my portfolio. You see?
Take notes.
And the other thing that we are suffering from is, because of the crack epidemic, we have a lot of young men and women, but young men especially, who are raised without parents and a father figure in their life. Now, I'm not saying you can't be a great man without some male figure somewhere, but typically the rule is if you want to be an engineer, you need to see an engineer. Okay. So when you don't have that, two things happen. How are you going to be a good father if you've never seen a good father? That's hard to do when you never modeled it. You never seen it modeled to you. The other thing is being responsible for your offsprings. Because of the system we live in America, and welfare, etc., you don't necessarily have to take care of your offsprings. Well, that's not true anywhere else in the world. That's why Africans look at African Americans so funny, because the culture they come out of, you got to produce in order to eat. That's not true in America. So that gives you a really kind of unbalanced reality that you're operating in. Because right now, I hear arguments on Clubhouse all day long about reparations. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not saying we're not owed the money, but I'm saying to you, America's broke. I don't see how you're going to get blood out of a turnip. And especially when these white people are fighting for their survival right now. That's why QAnon and all this foolishness happened, okay? When you could go to Ghana tomorrow and get 20 acres. They asking you to come. And instead, you over here trying to fight somebody to get something that you're not going to get. And let me give you a good example. When we had the first Million Man March, and all these black people marched on Washington, I'm not even talking about Dr. King. I'm talking about Farrakhan's marches. Mm-hmm. Had I been Bill Clinton, I'd have came out and said, I'm going to give everybody here 10 states, Mercedes, BMW, Cadillac of your choice, and $100,000. Because first and foremost, because we don't produce a lot of things we need in order to survive, like toilet paper, for example. Mm-hmm. I said, now, here's the caveat. If you have to ask white people for anything, you're going to have to go back and pick cotton. You know where we'd be right now? We'd be picking cotton. Because you don't make tires for your car. You don't make zippers for your pants. You don't make underwear. You don't make any of the things you need in order to be a country or a civilization. So sometimes you need to be careful what you ask for. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
We need to then get in the business of creating a world that we can sustain ourselves in before you scream, I want to be free and independent. Because right now, if they handed it to you, are you prepared? No. How many of us know how to purify water? Huh? I'm not even talking about sanitation where, like when you go to the bathroom, somebody has to work the sewer system. All those things are necessary in your own country and civilization. If you run in it, you have to know how to do all those things. Mm-hmm. And very few of us are in the position to do that right now. So, and I'm not saying we can't. I'm just saying we haven't mastered those things that we need to in order to sustain some of these things we're screaming and hollering about. And so we have a lot of work to do. Yeah. Even on the history tip. I mean, how many of us honestly sit down and read a book and gain knowledge of who we are on a regular basis?
Brother, so many people have told me I hate to read. And I'm like, why did you just say that out loud?
Oh, I had a young man on Clubhouse. He challenged me about all these books I have. And the books are written by white people. I was going to say, dude, every book you have ever had is written by a white person or published by a white person. Everyone. And especially your Bible and all them. Ain't no black folks making them books. Okay. But the scary part of it was when he told me he didn't read books. Because I was actually going to send him some information. And when he said that, I'm like, you know what? If I send him some information, I'm as foolish as he is. He already told me he's not going to read a book.
Yeah, that's going to turn into coasters.
No, it didn't turn into anything because I canceled that ticket in a hurry. Okay.
Yeah. So speaking of books, and we're going to get off here shortly. I know I've probably held my people up, but I'm sure they've enjoyed this conversation equally as I have. Speaking of books, what are some entry-level books for say somebody that just that they want to have a connection with who they used to be, and to know themselves?
First book I would tell them to read, if you've not read any books at all, read Destruction of Black Civilization by Chancellor Williams. Next book, if you want to dig a little deeper, go into Diop, African Origin Civilization, Myth or Reality. Without getting too awfully deep, you could go into Civilization or Barbarism by Diop. All those might be kind of hard to read. Ivan Van Sertima's books, African Presence in Europe, African Presence in America, They Came Before Columbus, Egypt Revisited. There's a lot of books that Van Sertima edited. Those are good books. You have Frank Snowden, Before Color Prejudice and Blacks in Antiquity, if you want to know what happened in the Greek era. And then you clearly have Dr. Clarke's books, Christopher Columbus
Before
and
Columbus.
the African Holocaust.
Yeah, I got that one.
Yeah. You have African People in World History, African People in World Revolution. There are 70 some books by Dr. Clarke's, and most of them are easy reads. Another good book I would recommend to everyone is called Visions for Black Men by Naeem Akbar. You need to know the difference between boys and girls and men and women. Boys play with toys, men build things and leave a legacy. So your status as a man is not dependent upon your age. It's dependent upon what you do. You can be an 80-year-old boy.
That's right.
You have more toys, tennis shoes, albums, cars, chains, all that kind of stuff than you do books.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can easily compare your library. A great book that I highly recommend to everyone is called Stolen Legacy by George G.M. James. He said Egyptian philosophy or Greek philosophy is stolen from Egyptian philosophy, and he does a analysis of all of that, all the Greek scholars, and you'll see that is definitely a fact. And then if you want to get into some more serious stuff, like the things I am doing, then you get into Church Ward and some of those kinds of books, God, Man, the Word Made Flesh, where you're in deep water now. That's post-secondary work, so that's not beginner stuff. So the books I gave you initially, those would be the ones I recommend for starters. Do Van Sertima's books, do Clarke's books, Chancellor William, even John Jackson's book, although it's not an easy read. So Francis Cress Welsing, Crest Theory of Color Confrontation, and the ISIS Papers. There's a lot of books by different psychologists and so it kind of depends upon where you really want to be in all of this, what you're looking for as far as the subject matter. But as far as history, I would start with the books I suggested, and that keep you busy for
a long
rest
time
of this year. Yeah.
A long time. So how can the people find you? I know I found you on Clubhouse. Is that primarily the platform that you use to disseminate the information?
For now, there's a couple emails. Dr. Phil True at gmail.com is email that people can send me. I also have one, P True Jr., P True JR at AOL.com. Those would be the easiest ways to find me.
Okay.
I really don't do a lot of stuff on social media simply because of who I am, and the government has come after me in my life. I've experienced the O.J. Simpson, burn my house to the ground. That happened to me. So I already know when you're doing what I'm doing, this can be very dangerous. This is not for the faint of heart.
Mhm.
They
So,
don't want you to know the things that where I'm talking about. And that's already happened to us on Clubhouse. So that'll tell you. They've already labeled those church ward books that I'm telling you about, they label those as being controversial, etc. And these books are from white people that are 100 years old. I don't see the controversy in it. But if I don't want you to know who you are, and I don't want you to know that you have a history of 100,000, 200,000, 800,000 years, then yeah, I surely wouldn't want you reading those books. I get it.
so, and you do a show. You do multiple shows on a weekly basis, right? On Clubhouse.
Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays at 7 o'clock Central Standard Time.
Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays at 7 p.m. Central Time.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and your handle on Clubhouse is Dr. Phil True, correct?
Yes, or Dr. True, something like that. Yeah.
Let me look it up.
I think on there, yeah, I don't know what it is because I didn't, I didn't build all that stuff. So you already know.
Because I already know some people are going to want to hear you do your deep dives. So
Well,
it's actually Dr. True. Let me
okay,
fix this for it
okay.
on Clubhouse.
Right.
Dr. Phil
And the
True.
show is True Talks. Although you have to kind of look for us because you know how Nicholas was putting it out there, you know how they list shows.
Mm-hmm.
They stopped listing mine. They take it down once you put it up. It's for about a minute and they take it back down again. So that's why we know we're going to have to do something. But we have a website coming out in a week or two, and believe me, it's going to be the talk of the town. This is going to change the world as we know it, both on for the people of color and non-melanated people, because we're talking about creating the most prolific history site that you've ever seen,
Mm-hmm.
starting with the origin of man all the way down to contemporary times in every subject, in every topic, for all the people of color worldwide. We're actually working on a data center that we're going to build in Colorado. This is a
Mm-hmm.
$50 million project that rival Google and Microsoft,
Mm-hmm.
where we can literally take all the information and put it in electronic format for the future of all the people of color and all the things that we've ever done from every people. So people of India, Asia, Mexico, Native people in the Americas, African people, all of theirs, because we don't know any of their history. The only thing we know anything about is white conquest.
Mm-hmm.
And, without all these other people, white society wouldn't be what it is today. So we need to know, what really happened and who did what to who. And the fact that white civilization is only 2,500 years old. They haven't been around a long time. Greek civilization doesn't go back that far.
Very,
And the
very.
Jewish people in the Bible were not white, just in case somebody's confused. Well, the Bible takes place in Africa. It's not in Europe.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, it just got to be the Middle East. That's North Africa, in case you want to just go look at a map or a globe. You feel me? It's still attached. Okay. And I don't know why you'd have to go all the way down into the Sudan and Nubia to go to Israel when it's a 27-mile land bridge from Egypt over there. You could just walk across that little land bridge to where you're going. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
why in the hell you would go all the way south down to the Red Sea. You feel me? You're in Black Africa when you get down there. And when you cross the Red Sea, you're in Saudi Arabia, and they have no history of you coming through there. So I'm just saying.
Mm. Woo, Dr. Phil, you have set the internet on fire yet again, my brother. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Yes, sir.
Man,
Well, it's been fun. Been
you
fun. Yeah.
so in closing, what are some closing statements that you would like to leave to the listeners?
I just would encourage everyone to you know, take time every day to try to learn something about who you are. I refer to myself as an African born in the diaspora. And the reason being, even though I'm born in Minneapolis, Minnesota, is that if I connect to Africa, I connect to the first woman and everything that has come into existence. I have a legacy of and a cultural connection to. If you're an African American, your history starts with Phillis Wheatley in 1619, and it literally is one of slavery. So there's a big difference. And if you're black, I'm not sure what that is. So, you can be whatever if you're just black. Okay. They can make you whatever because there is no history. So, so that's where I am. And I recommend another thing. Collect and look at National Geographics. National Geographic, you'd be surprised at the information they have in those magazines for the last 75 to 100 years on you in color, in detail. That's one of the best kept secrets in the world.
National Geographic's magazines?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
I have one National Geographic on the DNA, and it talks about they know that all the people on the earth came from an African woman. They did the DNA. The same way with Newsweek. I have another magazine from
They
Discover
labeled her,
magazine.
They labeled her Lucy, right? Not Lucy. Yeah, Lucy.
Lucy or Eve or whatever you want to
Yeah.
call her.
Yeah.
I mean, all of those are, non-African terms, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
But I have a Discover magazine has a whole thing on. It's called 10,000 Years of Solitude. These are the people of Australia. And they tell you what they look like, what they did, and 10,000 years of solitude. Think about that. Now, that's older than the Bible. So they were there doing their thing before the Bible in Adam and Eve. Just think about that, okay? Because the Bible ain't, Adam and Eve ain't 10,000 years old. You feel me?
Yeah.
So these people were in Australia before the Garden of Eden, and they look like you, okay? And they tell you exactly what those people from Europe did to them. They killed every man, woman, and child. There is no more indigenous Australians on the planet. They cut off their nuts and let them run till they died. They took their babies and slammed their heads against rocks. Hey, you need to read this. This is a white magazine. Yeah, no. See, we busy clowning. We need to be serious. Because the people that are doing this to you, they're real serious. You think about it. These people ran up on the Capitol and peed on Nancy Pelosi's desk last week, bro. This is a white woman, a rich white woman, the third most powerful person in the United States of America. Now, if they'll do that to her, what the hell you think they'll do to you?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Oh, man. This has been a great interview, Dr. True. I want to thank you for coming on. I want to thank your wife for helping us with the technology earlier today. It's really been a eye-opener, a wealth of knowledge, and we didn't even scratch the surface. I had more questions, but
right. Well, if you still have a podcast, we try it again. Black History Month ain't over. I got 2 more weeks we can talk. They might run me off when it gets to be Italian week or something. Or no, it's what comes next? Irish. Okay. Yeah. So y'all got, next week is Valentine's Day, and then you got to move out of the way because the Irish are taking over. So,
St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah. Hey, man. And they serious. Okay. See, I'm in a place that is a large black population, Kansas City. I haven't seen one thing on Black history yet. This is the 10th, ain't it?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. I'm just checking.
Well, we typically get the I Have a Dream speech the whole 28 days.
Yeah.
Be like, all right, that's it.
Yeah, I ain't mad at, it turned into a nightmare now, but yeah. Nothing comes to a sleeper but a dream.
There we go. That's a song. Well, listen, Dr. Phil, I appreciate you having here, man. And we're going to stay in contact. And I'm going to sneak it in. When I ain't got to sneak in, I'm going to come into your rooms and listen to some of your teachings too, man. I want to thank you again for coming, man, and thank all the listeners and all the viewers for chiming in. And this will be restreaming on my Audacity platform, which is currently on iTunes, Spotify, Google, and I think that's it. And Anchor, my bad, and Anchor. So if you want to go back and listen and take some notes, because he did list a lot of books, it'll be up by today's Wednesday. It should be up by this weekend. Thank you again, Dr. Truth. I wish you nothing but the best. And thank you to all my listeners. This has been the Audacity with Jamil Harley and Dr. Truth.
The Audacity.